Today our subject is on the meaning of aditan, or determination, resolution, and how to apply it. I'd like to start with reading just a little passage from a sutta. It's the second sutta in the group of the middle-length discourses, so here is the passage. In this, a monk, through wise judgment, does not accept a thought of sensuality that arises. He cuts it off, refuses it, eliminates it, destroys it, wipes it out of existence. He does not tolerate any thought of anger or hatred that arises. He cuts it off, refuses it, eliminates it, destroys it, wipes it out of existence. He does not tolerate any harmful thought that arises in him. He cuts it off, refuses it, eliminates it, destroys it, and wipes it out of existence. For the asova, that is dangers, troubles, or sufferings that arise through accepting these, do not arise when they are not tolerated, when they are cut off, and when they are removed. So how do we apply what the Buddha is telling us here? How do we do it? Clearly, the first thing we need to see is that we can't just say to ourselves like that, okay, tomorrow I will not accept any anger. Tomorrow I will not accept any sensuality. Tomorrow I won't have any of those. We can't do it if our decision is not based on, first of all, knowing why we are doing this. What purpose does it serve in regard to our aim in our life? So specifically, if our aim is not to follow the path of the Buddha's teaching, if our aim is not to end suffering, and if we don't have faith that this teaching works and this is why we're doing it for this purpose, it will never work. Secondly, it has to be based on understanding why anger is not acceptable in us, and not having just a theoretical understanding, but having a really authentic, true understanding within ourselves, honestly knowing for ourselves why we're doing it, knowing why it's unacceptable, in regard to whatever defilement we're talking about. Here the main examples were about anger and sensuality, and there are many other smaller defilements that are included in those two, but they might appear in some different forms or under different guises. For a lot of people, a big problem, for example, is the attachment to whatever form of sensual pleasure, that is, pleasure we can have through our senses. And just to note, sometimes when we talk about this, sometimes it refers more specifically to the attachment to romantic relationships or the attachment to sexuality. But here we're not necessarily talking only about that, because it's not necessarily such a big subject for everybody. But everybody will have some kind of attachment to some form of pleasure of senses. Whether it's only I love to watch movies, or whether it's I love to have fun with people, and I love to laugh, and I love to talk with people, and I love to socialize, or I love to eat good food and enjoy my food, or attachment to whatever form of entertainment we feed ourselves on normally throughout our lives. So this attachment is not something that we're going to automatically want to get rid of if we don't have the aim of purifying our mind and ending suffering. Precisely because it's something sweet, it's something we consider pleasant, it's something enjoyable. It's not like anxiety, fear, or anger, that if we have a big problem with these kilesa, these emotions, we want to get rid of them, we like to get rid of them, but we don't necessarily want to let go of our attachment to sensual pleasure because we like it. That's precisely why we're attached. So all this is mainly just to say that it's all the more reason that there needs to be a good, strong understanding of why it's no good, the attachment to sensual pleasures. Otherwise, all we're going to be doing is sort of temporarily controlling or suppressing our desire, but there will be no true renunciation, and it's not possible to apply a strong determination, a strong resolution like that described in the sutta. So what is the kind of understanding that we need to have? In regard to the attachment to pleasures of senses, the main point that we need to grasp, that we need to understand, which applies to all form of sensual pleasures, is that no matter what form of pleasure we are attached to, addicted to, it is an attachment, it is an addiction. And the suffering of being addicted, being attached, being enslaved to a sensation or a sight or a sound is very, very great. It doesn't matter what it is. When we are addicted to it, when we are sticky to it, and when we are a slave to it, then this is a very great suffering. And the way that our mind cheats us is that when we see the agreeable looking object, we see something agreeable, we see something desirable, we see it pleasant. And our mind does not show us all the trouble, all the problems, all the suffering that comes with it. But the suffering and the danger and the problems are all there nonetheless, and we get them nonetheless. It's as if there were a cake that looks like a chocolate cake, but actually it's made all out of excrement, and it has just a little layer of sugar coating on the top. But all we see when we look at it is the little sugar coating. And we still keep going for the sugar coating all the time, even though there's always this excrement underneath. This is what it is to be addicted. When we are addicted to something, even when we are aware that it's causing us suffering, even if we don't want to be addicted anymore, we still continue to be addicted. We still continue to go for the thing. And we still continue to think that it is pleasant and agreeable. Ajahn told a story about one time when he was young. He went with his family to visit some relatives, and there was a little girl, maybe 2 years old or maybe 3 years old, from the other household, who came running to her mother while they were there, so proud and so happy. "Look, Mama, Mama, I dyed my hair just like you." But she'd taken some of her own excrement to dye her hair. So of course everyone around was totally disgusted, because these were all adults and they saw what she had done as something very unpleasant, something nobody would want to do, nobody wants to touch. Now you have to go clean it, now it takes a long time, now maybe you have risk of getting sick, now you have all kinds of problems because of this. But for her, all she had seen was the joy and the happiness of dyeing her hair like Mama. What's to be understood from this example is that practicing Dhamma means growing up and seeing things as an adult sees things. It means stopping to be childish and just indulging in whatever seems pleasant, whatever seems nice. And when we continue to remain sticky to our old habits, despite knowing that they are doing us no good, despite knowing that they have to be given up, despite knowing that they are suffering, it's as if at the age of 20, 30 or 40 years old, we're still dyeing our hair like the little girl, using our own excrement and thinking it's a good thing. This goes for any defilement, any kilesa, any impurity that takes our energy and that is a block to our practice. So at some point we have to come to understanding where it's born from and understand the danger of it and decide to not accept it. But then the work is not done. Because even when there is quite deep understanding, it might lessen the power that this kilesa or that this desire has over us, but it doesn't completely remove it, because the mind is just an automatic machine that will still continue to pull in the same direction it's always pulled all its life. That's how it works. So based on having good understanding, now we make an aditan, strong determination, not to accept this kilesa to rule our mind, to enter and to drive us. Part of this then involves training the mind to not only see the sugar coating, but to see the excrement underneath, to see the danger, the trouble, and the suffering that comes when we are addicted to whatever is our attachment to sensual pleasure. So it means that whenever a thought of sensuality or an object of sensuality is there for the mind, and again, I'm not only talking about sexuality, although for a lot of people it can be a big subject, whenever it arises, we don't trust the mind when it says that this thing is agreeable and it's pleasant and we should go for it. Don't be so sure. Learn to see the danger, the trouble, and the suffering associated with it. Learn to turn it upside down. Or rather, I should say, turn right side up what has been upside down. And it's from here, based on this very deep understanding, true understanding within oneself, and training the mind to see according to this true understanding, that then it becomes possible to absolutely just not tolerate, not accept this kilesa within us. So from that point, then it is as if we have a filing cabinet And the file of this kilesa, this defilement, we close it. We have understood, we know what goes inside it. We recognize any thought of sensuality, let's say, as it arises, or we recognize any thought of anger or irritation as it arises, and it is known so clearly by the mind as being just not acceptable, not tolerated, not possible, that this file is closed and the subject is solved. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that we've uprooted the defilement completely. Anagami uproots anger and uproots sensuality, for example, but it's possible to solve 90 or 95% of it before anagami. It's really possible to have this file closed and that the mind hardly ever will dare to bring even this subject or will dare to try to go in this subject, because we know absolutely that it's just useless, that we will not accept it. This is what aditan, strong determination, means. It means having such a strong resolution, such a strong determination, that the impurity, the kilesa, the problem almost never arises. And when I say almost never, it really means almost never. Ajahn was explaining that when one's determination is this strong in regard to some kilesa that is really known to be unacceptable, there is practically no thought of it anymore. It barely comes even in sleep. And for somebody who has fully understood and who has really renounced in this way, if it arises even just the hint of it in his sleep, he will wake up with the shock of it. He won't accept it. It's not acceptable to enter the mind, to take hold of the mind even in sleep. And now here where we have to be careful is not to expect to suddenly all at once jump to this level, but to know that this is what we're aiming for. It takes work, it takes determination, it takes effort to get to this level. So it means that if we do work to understand a kilesa that we have a problem with and that is draining all our energy, and we work to train the mind to not accept it whenever an object arises, then if this kilesa does still persist in arising in us, desire of sensuality, for example, or anger still arises in us, what do we have to do? We have to close the file. Don't open it. Don't go into it. Don't enter. Don't tolerate it. File closed, that's it. We do not accept it. We refuse it. We wipe it out of existence, as the Buddha said. And we do not add more kilesa on top of it of being disappointed, being angry with ourselves, thinking that it's no good, that it's no use, that we can't do it, doubt whether we can do it. All these will just be more problems that we pile on top of the original one, which is the thought of sensuality or of anger or whatever other kilesa we have problems with. It's as if we have a garbage bag that we have closed up and tied a knot in, but a hole appears in it and some of the garbage starts to come out. What do? Do we cry, lie on the floor and lament the fact that this garbage bag has a hole in it? Or do we go and put tape over the hole and close it and stop allowing the garbage to flow out? We put tape over it. So why don't we do the same thing when it's in our mind? So this is how we work to solve a kilesa, to solve a defilement, to practice resolution, determination in regard to them. And when one is solved, when one filing cabinet is closed, then this will mean that we now have energy and the ability to work at a deeper level. There will be another kilesa that is unsolved. There will be another way that the mind wants to play with us. But now we can work on that one and work to solve that one in exactly the same way. And so, one by one, little by little, we close all our filing cabinets, we solve all our problems, and we gain more and more freedom. It is such a great freedom not to be constantly pulled one way or another by sensuality or by anger. Nobody can manipulate us with these things. When we've solved anger in ourselves, nobody can make us angry. Nobody, no matter what they do. So the resolution, the determination not to accept the kilesa, the defilement that is our greatest enemy, comes first from understanding who our enemy is and how it is our enemy. Then from here comes the decision to renounce it, to not accept it. And then we have to work to train the mind to not accept it. And with this understanding, with this renunciation, and with this constant effort, the file becomes closed and we do not tolerate it anymore. The subject is solved and it barely arises. And so we become more and more independent and more free.